Good morning again. So as I was saying, rather than tell you what I do, I thought I'd share a few things I believe. And the first thing I really believe is that a single individual or a small group of people can really do amazing things. I'm sure you guys already know that. I mean, change the world amazing. And the second thing I believe is that to change the world or to make your idea happen or really to be successful at whatever it is that you're trying to do, you actually need to believe you can do it. You have to be passionate about what you do. So I'm passionate about working on things that are new to world and new to HP, and that's basically what I go to work and do every day, which I love. And talking about things that are new to world is also the general theme of what I'd like to share with you today as well. So who can remember when they felt like this? I see some smiles in the room, yeah? You know, as a kid, you really do believe that everything's possible. And you don't doubt yourself. You know, whether that's setting up a lemonade stand or heading out on the weekend to wash cars like I did growing up in Australia. I'm not sure what the equivalent in Sweden is. What would the equivalent be? Lemonade stands in Sweden as well? A very short time of year. You know, regardless, I'm sure kids in Sweden, whatever they do when they're young, they still feel like this and believe like this. And then we get older, yeah? Things change. And more we start to feel like this. Now, I'm sure nobody in this room ever feels like this, but I have a friend that feels like this sometimes. So, what changed? Maybe we didn't have the opportunity to pursue those skills that we were passionate about, yeah? Maybe we didn't have access to the tools and technologies that we needed. Maybe we just listened to all those people around us that have a habit of telling us why we can't do something or why we shouldn't be doing something. Maybe we just got busy with other things, with family, other social responsibilities, and we just had other interests. But of course, that doesn't happen to everybody. Here's a couple of my favorites, people that I admire for being able to continue to build bigger and better lemonade stands. But of course, you don't have to be famous and you don't have to be well known to have made it through to the other side. I'm sure you guys all know people that you work with, people that you live with that still have that can-do attitude. And I'm sure all of you are exactly those sort of people yourselves, right? And so what do all of those people have in common? Well, a couple of things that I think are important. The first is that they're all natural problem solvers. They're all able to spot a problem and have the courage to go after solving it. Or they're able to solve a problem in a way that no one has thought of before. They're constant tinkerers. They're always trying new things. And they're persistent. If something doesn't work, they don't give up. They learn from that failure and use that to try something new and different. And maybe there's a special spark of something, maybe a little bit of luck, or maybe it's just an uncanny sense of timing. You know, they're working on the right things at the right time. But for me, actually, it's a little bit more than this. These things are important, but what I think these people all have in common is something that I call the maker spirit, which is really more an attitude than anything else. It's a belief that you can change the world. It's a belief that if you just keep focusing, you'll find a way through to the other side. It's a belief that everything is possible. And I think the other cool thing about the world we live in today is there's so many tools and technologies available to us to be successful makers. If you're designing new smart products, you don't have to design your own chipsets anymore. You can pull off the shelf parts and products now. You don't have to own a factory anymore. You can outsource manufacturing. Or as we'll talk about later, you can use 3D printing to produce your products. If you're a startup, you don't have to be out finding funding through venture capitalists anymore. You can use crowdsourcing sites like Kickstarter and others. Or of course, you can leverage Amazon and Etsy and eBay and other e-commerce sites as a point of presence. Or, of course, we all know we have unlimited access now to compute and storage and networking through services like Amazon Web Services and others. And I think at HP, our business really is to offer as many of these tools and technologies to you and your customers as we can, so that you can also leverage these and build on top of them. And I really think it's no accident with all of these tools and technologies and innovation available to more and more people now, what we're seeing is a parallel rise of a maker culture. I mean, going from an idea to making that idea happen really is becoming democratized now. I mean, you no longer have to be rich, you don't have to be have been to the right schools or to know the right people anymore. Because of all of this innovation, you can be a publisher, a designer, as I said, a manufacturer. Everyone can be a maker. And you've probably gathered now that I'm using this term in a very broad sense. I don't mean people who tinker around in their garages with robots and 3D printing. I mean anybody who has an idea they want to make happen, anybody who has a product or a business they want to build, anybody with a goal they want to achieve. I mean, everybody in this room, according to that definition, is a maker. And with all of these tools and technologies available, I think the question shifts as well from how do I do something? There's plenty of people to help with the how. The real question becomes what? As makers, what sort of world do we want to create? So along those lines, I'd just like to play a quick video that talks about the sort of world that we'd like to help create.
Running down the street like your hair's on fire, thoughts running fast like a man on a wire. Can't stop laughing, but I don't know why. Nobody knows why. Shouldn't wait for the weather to change. Every day from here on, I got the top down strap on your shoulder, running down you like an ice cream cone. We're not alone, never gonna be alone. Can't help but feel alright. Run through the day till the end of the night. The sun keeps coming up in your blue eyes. These are the best days of our lives. Mind exciting, what's your meaning? Don't understand, but the sea is in me. Music so loud and it keeps repeating, never gonna go home. Can't help but feel alright. Run through the day till the end of the night. The sun keeps coming up in your blue eyes. These are the best days of our lives. Best days of our lives. Best days of our lives. Can't help but feel alright. Run through the day till the end of the night. Sun keeps coming up in your blue eyes. Never gonna be alone. Can't help but feel alright. Run through the day till the end of the night, and the sun keeps coming up in your blue eyes. These are the best days of our lives. The best days of our lives. The best days of our lives.
That was a video about me taking my daughter to college. Sort of. But you know what I love about that video is that it really doesn't paint the future as some clean and shiny science fiction movie. Yeah. In fact, I think the future will look a lot like today. I just hope that instead of us having to work technology so hard, that technology starts working for us. I mean, technology really is there to help our lives be better, to help us be more productive, to be more creative, or really just to spend more time with the people we love. And maybe the other thing that you notice, that I'm sure we all notice every day, is how our physical and digital worlds becoming a lot more intertwined. And the lines between the two really are starting to blur. And at HP, you may have heard us use the word blended reality. And that's actually what we're talking about here. It's the fusing of our physical and digital worlds to help people live and have better experiences. And you know, we can see this all around us. How many people here wear a wearable? Maybe a few. Oh, a few hands up in the back. So we have the wearables that take our physical health and take the data and move it into the digital world and help us analyze that data, and then use it to make recommendations about a change in exercise routine or diet to help us live a better life back in the physical world, digital to physical to digital. Or we see it in the Internet of Things around us, the sensing of our environment, collecting all of that data into the digital world and then using it to act back on the physical world, to automate the lighting and the heating in the room, or just to manage our energy grids. I mean, we see it everywhere around us. And at HP, we see a number of technology trends driving towards this future, and that as a company, we're really focusing on. So one example is hypermobility, right? The shift from devices we carry to devices we wear, to devices that will soon become part of us. Or I mentioned the Internet of Things, technology being infused in the everyday objects and devices around us. Or smart machines. As those same objects and devices start having machine learning and artificial intelligence embedded, they become smarter. When they grow legs or sprout wings or wheels, well, we get self-driving cars, we get drones, we get robots. So I thought I'd just go through a few of these trends with you and just let you know what, as a company, we're doing with them and about them. The first one I'll start with is hypermobility. Any guesses here how many people have a mobile phone these days? Not in this room, of course, but just broadly, globally. Any wild guesses? It's in the billions. It's more than 1, it's less than 7. It's 5. There we go. 5 billion people in the world, over 5 billion people use a mobile phone today. I often laugh because only 4 billion people use a toothbrush. So I guess there's a billion people on the phone out there with really bad teeth. But even more ironic than that is that 1 billion people who use a mobile phone still live under the poverty line. When you think about it, mobility is really changing Maslow's hierarchy, that basic hierarchy of human needs, right? We're moving from food, water, shelter to food, water, mobility, shelter. I mean, mobility really is becoming that important to us. I think I'd turn around and go home to get the phone I forgot than if I left my wallet at home these days. At least I can pay with my phone now. I don't need my wallet anymore. And how many people who here know that HP is doing wearables and smartwatches? A few? Okay, you'll hear more about it over time. But last year we started this with a collaboration with a men's fashion designer called Michael Bastian. And we took a very different approach to the market. Because think about it, when you wear something, it really expresses who you are. You want it to look good. So what we didn't want to do was come out with a piece of technology that you slapped on your wrist that you didn't really love and want to wear. Instead, we wanted to work with the watches and the brands that you know and love today and that you all wear today, and instead take their designs, take their brand, and just add a smart layer of HP in those watches to make them smart watches. And so last week we announced another partnership with Movado, which is a Swiss watch manufacturer, so I believe they'll be available in Europe shortly. And yesterday or the day before, we announced a partnership with Titan, the largest watchmaker in India, to do the same. So I really hope next year, if I'm here again, that when I say who's wearing a wearable, you all put your hands up and you're all wearing a wearable engineered by HP. I look forward to that. But technology really is also becoming a part of us. And this isn't a product that's available yet, but these sorts of products are starting to become more and more closer to today. This is a contact lens. And you can see in the contact lens there's a sensor. And this is a contact lens for people with diabetes. And the way this works is that this contact lens can actually sense or measure the blood sugar levels in the fluid around your eye. And in real time, it can let you know that your blood sugar levels are a little out of norm. And it can glow a faint red just to tell you need to do something about it. So no more finger pricking, no more worrying, no more guessing. Technology really is becoming part of us more and more. And I mentioned the Internet of Things earlier. So, I mean, HP, I would say, could be the largest IoT deployment in the world, but we just don't talk about it that way. But we've got 40 million printers. One of them's right here. They're all connected. They're all smart. They all generate data that we can use to improve their efficiency or to manage them in fleets or just to offer printing as a service. But when we think about the Internet of Things, we actually think more about the Internet of all things. Because most things in the world aren't IoT enabled. Let's face it, most things in the world don't have embedded compute and storage and networking. Think of all of the products on our supermarket shelves. A bottle of wine, a box of cereal. Or think about all the paper products that we still interact with. 50 trillion pages printed every year as office documents or books or magazines or building wraps or billboards. So the other thing we're focused on is an IoT platform we call HP Live, which really allows us to take any of these objects I just mentioned and associate a digital service with them. To allow anyone to embed a digital code or a digital tag in anything printed or made, and then to control what happens when you use your phone or your device or your wearable with it. And maybe the topic that I'm personally most passionate about is something that I mentioned, before I get to the smart machines part with the robots and the drones and everything cool like that. Here's an example of HP Live, shows the concept of how it works. This is a subway station in South Korea. And a few years ago, we partnered with a UK retailer supermarket called Tesco. And instead of building new stores in South Korea, they decided to take their stores to where the people were. And in South Korea, a lot of people commute by subway. And so what you see here is actually a printed storefront. So people coming home from work of an evening or whenever can walk up to that wall with their phone, and they can buy milk, and they can buy bread, and they can buy orange juice with their phone, and Tesco will have it delivered to their home before they arrive. So it's an example of how IoT doesn't need devices on the front end. IoT can be triggered by paper products, by any object. Now we get to smart machines. Sorry, I was a bit ahead of myself there. Got all excited. This is an area that you'll see and hear a lot more of in the future. Now, when I was growing up, and still very much today, the way you programmed computers was you told them how to do something with an algorithm, yeah? So a programmer would figure out what they wanted the computer to do, and they would tell the computer how to do it. But more and more, because there's more data available to us today, you guys have heard the concept and the term machine learning before? A few nods? You'll be hearing a lot more about it. Instead of telling computers how to do something, more and more computers are learning how to do things themselves. All you tell them is what objective you have, and they learn. They learn how to meet that objective themselves. And for me, this really hit home with an example that I heard of last year. It was a company in the UK that programmed an artificial intelligence how to play the game Breakout. You guys have heard of the game Breakout? You hit the ball against the bricks, and you hit a brick, and it disappears or is destroyed, and you get a score. So all they told this AI was, hey, go and play this game, and the objective is the highest score possible. But they didn't tell it how to play the game. They didn't even tell it that you needed to hit the ball with the bat. In the first half an hour, the bat sort of stood on the side of the screen, hardly moving, never hit the ball, wasn't a very good player. The next 30 minutes, it figured out, oh, if I hit the ball against a brick, I get a score. It started playing better, played as well as maybe a 9-year-old kid. 30 minutes later, it couldn't miss the ball. It was playing as well as any human being could play. And that's fine, okay, it's a computer, you might expect it. But the next half an hour really, just for me, was an eye-opener. And that was when it figured out if it hit the ball at the right angle, up the left-hand side of the screen in just the right way, the ball would bounce through to the top of the screen and bounce around and hit all of the bricks from the top without having to use the bat at all. It struck me that this was smarter than a human being. Okay, yeah, all right, it's only a game. Yet a few months later, AI solved a problem that our best scientists haven't been able to solve for over 100 years. And there's a type of worm called a flatworm. It has the ability to regenerate its body parts. That'd be nice. So scientists have been trying to figure out how it did that. For over 100 years, the best scientists in the world have been tackling that problem, but not being able to find the answer. So they gave the problem to an artificial intelligence. They gave it all the data they've collected. And in 42 hours, this AI figured out a working theory for how a flatworm regenerates its body parts. It was able to creatively come up with an answer that our best scientists haven't been able to come up with. So it's not just games. It's more than that. And there's a lot of debate about whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. It just is, right? We have to figure it out, of course. I'm a born optimist. I think it's a good thing. And we're doing smart machines and robotics at HP. I bet you guys didn't know that either. We have a lab in Boise. And what this lab does is that they actually have QA and testing for our printing products. And so what they figured out was that it was a lot better to have a robot do that testing than it was to have a human being. I mean, can you imagine the human being, the job where you had to lift up the lid of a printer 10,000 times to see if it would work? 10,000 times? Much better to have a robot do that. So they developed robots to do all of the testing for these printers. They developed more sophisticated robots and different robots until they developed an area of competence that the company's using to figure out what we need to be doing in smart machines and robotics. What I love, though, is that they attack this problem like a team of makers, as I mentioned earlier. So just very creative and innovative, and I'd just like to play a quick video to give you a glimpse into that.
Good morning, Chris. The team meeting is in the robot lab in 5 minutes.
I tell people I don't come to work, I come to my playground. The robotics team at HP is comprised of myself. I am fortunate enough to be the engineering manager of this group. We have some folks that are specialized in artificial intelligence. They are masters of being able to interpret human intellect and understanding applied neurological sciences. And then there are other folks that are mechanical geniuses. So they are capable of bringing together the pieces and the motors and the controls that are necessary to execute what's in our minds into the physical world. They're capable of pretty much making anything on this planet. I haven't found anything that they can't make yet. Robotics is limitless. It doesn't really matter where you try to dream these robots' job, application. There's a need to enhance our experience and give us more time to be able to think about what we would like to do personally and how we spend our time in this world. The traditional engineer is the lab coat with the pocket protector, the pin bleeding out, and they've got the ramen stain on their shirt, right? So we're not those guys. We're actually very, very fun people. We do a lot of awesome things outside of here that also inspire us in our jobs. When we go home, we don't shut off. We actually are just kind of moving our innovation mind into a different environment. And as we discover things at home or out in the real world, and we're behaving more like our customers do, that's where the best innovation comes together.
And then we have another board down here that steps it down to 5 volts.
We are making art for the world. It's very much functional art. To be able to do that for a living every day and get paid to do it is a dream come true. Absolutely.
All right, so those guys clearly love what they're doing as well. So let's move on. 3D transformation very quickly. 3D transformation is a lot more than 3D printing. It's really the digitization of the entire manufacturing process, from designing a new physical product and part through to producing it in our factories or even in our homes. And so what's really important about this is on the front end of this process, you really need some really easy-to-use tools to allow anybody to take a physical object and to scan it into the digital world. Then you need to be able to upload it, to customize it, to share it, to secure it, to publish it, to sell it. And finally, you need a way to bring the result back into the physical world through 3D printing. So this is more of an end-to-end process, from idea and imagination through to final printed part. And on the front end of this, some of you may have heard of Sprout by HP. I think there's one here for you to go and look at if you haven't. But our goal there was to create a really immersive environment that anyone could intuitively use, to work with both physical and digital objects and to blend them together in new and different ways. And so last year we introduced Sprout by HP, and recently we've been really focusing that platform on using it to make it dead easy for anyone to scan and create 3D printed objects. And I'd just like to show you what we mean by easy.
My job can be really stressful. In what little spare time that I have, I like to play music. When I'm playing, everything else melts away. It has a very calming effect. Talking to these kids and having conversations, trying to connect with them, I like to kind of put them in that spot as well, to just let them know that they're going to be all right. A lot of times I just try to find things that I have in common with them. Hey, did you see the latest superhero movie? What'd you think about that? Things that you like to do for fun. Keep them happy and focused on that as opposed to what they're coming into the office for. First thing I discovered on Sprout was the 3D camera. I was like, this is just so cool. I really wanted to see what I could do with it. I loved watching the computer work, taking the 3D scan of the object. I'd never seen anything like that. The Intel RealSense technology let me capture a 3D scan that you can move around and resize easily. Right now, I'm designing a prototype that could go right on top of a child's cast. Okay, check this out. You're gonna love this. You're gonna be a total superhero. I thought this was a really cool idea because I wanted to make it customizable for him. I think making an idea into something real can help the child forget about their fears. That's a pretty great feeling.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So let's maybe talk about the back end of this process now, 3D printing. Of course, 3D printing isn't new. It's been around for many, many years, as I'm sure you're all aware. But there's a couple of things that really have limited its market adoption and the growth of the 3D printing market. The first one's speed. How many people here have actually seen something being printed on a 3D printer? All right, so one of the things you'll agree with is it's like watching paint dry, right? Takes a couple of hours even to print a small part. And the quality sometimes isn't that great. You can just really print a single color, and some of the material's a little brittle and really can't be used across many manufacturing applications. And it can be expensive, and it can have reliability issues. So these were all things that we identified, that things that needed to be addressed before we entered the 3D printing market. And so after we cracked all these problems, we announced HP's multi-jet fusion technology last year. And I thought what would be good is just to sort of do a very basic tutorial about how this works compared to the existing methods. So there's really two main methods of 3D printing today with some variants. One's called material extrusion, one's laser sintering, and the other one I just mentioned is HP's multi-jet fusion. And so here's a simulation of how each of these work, just very quickly. So the one on the left is probably the one that you may have seen at work already. It's material extrusion. It's like a glue gun. Think of it like a tube of toothpaste. You melt the plastic and squeeze it out of the end of the nozzle, and then you trace back and forward along the lines of the shape that you want to create. And this is in real time, so you can see why it takes a long time, and the quality isn't that great. And once you've finished one layer, then you have to bump up and you have to start and print a whole new layer until layer upon layer you get the product. Laser sintering uses lasers, as the name would suggest. You put down a bed of powder and then you shine a laser at it. And you still move that laser back and forward. And wherever that laser hits the powder, it fuses into a solid. And so it's better quality, but it's more expensive because obviously lasers are expensive. And they produce a lot of heat as well, and it still works line by line by line. Now, multi-jet fusion actually works layer by layer. So we use the same, once the laser's finished, you can see how slow it is. Once we use our inkjet printing technology, and in the same way we print ink, we print fusing agents. In one single pass, we can do an entire layer at a time, and then build that layer upon layer without going line by line, and it means we're 10 times faster than those other existing technologies. But the thing that I think is really, really interesting about multi-jet fusion is you can actually control the properties of the material that you print at a near molecular level. So in the 2D world, you've got pixels. We all know that you can change the color at a pixel level. In the 3D world, the equivalent is called a voxel, a volumetric pixel, or a 3D pixel. And multi-jet fusion can control the properties of a material it prints at a voxel level, including color. So you can do these amazing multicolored objects now. But we can also print these voxels at 300 million voxels per second. And we can do it at a very fine-grained accuracy, so 21 micron pitch accuracy, which is about a quarter of the width of a human hair. So we have very fine-grained control over the properties of the material that we're printing. And it's not just color. We can also control other things about the properties being printed. So I mentioned color, and you can do that, as I said, at a voxel level. But we can also control the surface properties. It can be smooth or it can be rough. The translucency, it can be solid or it can be see-through. It can be rigid or rubbery. We can even print electronics. And we're looking at ways in the future of using different materials, not just plastics, but ceramics and metals as well. So think about it. When you take all of this together, you have control over manufacturing at a level that we've never had before. If you put these easy-to-use tools on the front end that make it possible for anybody to design any product they can imagine, and you match it up with 3D printing technology that allows you to produce any product that you can imagine, that's why we think this is transformative. You can create products now that you've never been able to manufacture before. So I just want to share one example of a potential product in the future that future makers may be able to create.
HP's 3D printing technology enables the world to realize the full potential of 3D printing in fully functional parts. HP functional agents could control texture, friction, strength, elasticity, electrical properties, thermal properties, and more. Imagine a single part with stiffness optimized in some areas, elasticity in others, or wear resistance and friction customized where needed. Or imagine printing a complete electromechanical module in a single 3D build without requiring further assembly. The list of future possibilities seems endless.
And really, this is just the beginning. I mean, there's always new technologies being invented. There's always new technologies coming into the market, being researched. Just when you thought 3D was starting to gain traction and hit, then someone came up with 4D printing. Now, what is 4D printing? Well, it's 3D printing, but it uses smart materials that can actually change shape over time after they've been printed, based on external environment or external triggers. So think of an aeroplane wing that changes shape based on the atmospheric pressure or the temperature or altitude. And it can change shape to sort of maximize fuel efficiency and other attributes. Or haptic holography, which is also being evaluated and researched today. We all hear about virtual reality and being able to put a virtual object into the physical space. Haptic holography means that at one point in the future we'll be able to touch it, to interact with it, to physically feel it as well. I mean, mind-boggling, some of the things that are being invented. It really is just the beginning. So I would invite us all to unleash our inner maker, right? There's all of these tools and technologies available to us today. I mean, our goal is to provide as many of them to you guys as possible so you can focus on your business. And then I come back to this, back to the lemonade stand. It's probably my favorite image. To me, what it says and what I remember about growing up is when somebody asked you what you wanted to be when you grew up. I mean, I think everyone here has heard that question and remembers what it was like. You might answer an astronaut. You might answer a nurse or a doctor or an engineer. Whatever you answered, you didn't doubt that answer. You didn't say, I want to be an astronaut, but I don't know how, so I'm not going to bother. You believed what you said. You didn't doubt it. And I think just as adults, we sometimes forget that. But there's so much technology out there today, and I think the question, there's no reason to ask how we should do something or can we do something. The answer is yes, we can do it. The bigger question is, what should we do with it? What sort of world should we create? And then I often reflect on the fact that the future really hasn't happened yet. It's still in front of us. And we all get to control what that future looks like. So on behalf of HP, I look forward to seeing what we can do together with you guys to create the most compelling future possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you.